All right, welcome in. This is the Front Row Podcast, and I'm Coach Mark Gottfried. I'm excited today because I have enjoyed getting to know Jay Dixon, and he is joining me today on the Front Row Podcast, and this is going to be fun because I think there's a lot of people who actually listen who have been involved in sports. And I think you're going to give some great insights. So thank you for being on, and glad to have you.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's been wonderful getting to know you as well.
Thank you, Jay. So Jay has written this really great book. It's called After the Game. It will be a New York Times bestseller, I have no doubt. And I have enjoyed reading the book. And I'm going to kind of just give it my probably chopped up version. But where I think the value in this is taking former athletes, a lot of former athletes, not only athletes, but a lot of athletes, and really it's kind of the title of the book, what happens after the game. And I think from my own experiences and from friends that I've had that have played at a high level, a lot of times the question becomes what happens after the game. Like when I'm done playing, and a lot of guys struggle. They really, really struggle. But what you've done is you've found and you've created a really good niche where, with your background and being involved as an entrepreneur in businesses, you're able to kind of connect guys, if I'm saying this right, with the opportunity to potentially buy businesses and almost treat those business, with the same kind of attributes, the goal setting, the hard work, the teamwork, the organization, but create that where they have an opportunity to transition and then also continue to be successful. I don't know if I'm saying that all the way correctly, but I want you to kind of maybe give it your version if I'm getting that right or not.
Yeah. You're hitting the nail on the head. I think, to start at the beginning, one thing you talked about is the struggle, right? Is when athletes finish their sport, over 90% of them ask themselves, who am I? What am I doing? What's next, right? And through my career and all the opportunities and experiences and great people I've been around, I've always tried to find the game of business. So I started out after I played football, I played Division I football, I started a company. And that went well, and I didn't know you could sell a company. My resume was full of football stats, was full of all this fun stuff, and the corporate world wasn't really for me at that point. And so when I sold that first company and that gentleman that bought it, he taught me a lot. And, it wasn't life-changing, it wasn't retirement money, but as soon as I crossed that finish line, that was like a championship for me. And I thought, man, that was a high. That was a high. It wasn't like playing in front of 90,000 fans. It wasn't like winning a championship, but that's where this really all began. And so I've always been looking for that. What is the game of business? And so through this and through some of those struggles you mentioned, I was able to put this book together. And it's based on a lot of experience, a lot of stories, and a lot of studies, within the athletic education. And that's really what I harp on.
So you grew up out here in Orange County, San Clemente. It's a beautiful place, by the way. And you played college football. Played high school football. Then you got recruited, obviously, and played college football, and even had an opportunity in the NFL there after college. And but talk about kind of growing up for you, because I would imagine there's a lot of us that have played sports, and then you play it and you keep rising to the next level. You just keep going up. You're good enough from junior high to high school, then high school to be recruited in college. And then, you have success in college, which you did as well as a quarterback. And so talk about your background and then how your background kind of helped you kind of sort through all this to get to the place you are today with the book and obviously the opportunities you're providing for former athletes.
Yeah, absolutely. So, at the age of 7, I put on a football helmet. And from that moment on, that's who I was. That camaraderie, the teammates, the coach, that I just ate it up. It was everything I wanted. And so from the age of 7 until going through high school, I set that goal on, I want to play Division I football. I want to get a scholarship. I want to play Division I football on a scholarship. And at that time, I was recruited by the University of Nevada, and at the time, there was a head coach who had come back. His name's Chris Alt. He was a Hall of Fame coach. There were two coaches in America that were Hall of Fame still coaching, Bobby Bowden and Chris Alt. Wasn't good enough to go to Florida State, but when they offered me that opportunity, I had other trips lined up, and I said, no, I've accomplished my goal. So I went to University of Nevada, had a great run there, great team, and Coach Alt taught me a lot as well. You know, a lot of what he taught me, I apply in this book, and I apply in business, and I've applied in my personal life. So a lot of his leadership skills as a Hall of Fame coach, as simple as 5 minutes early, you're on time, you're late.
Always.
Always, right? Right? The way to read a game, you know, one thing I was taught at the age of 7 through college, which I talk about in the book here, one thing that athletic education, and I'm sure you taught your players this, it's called metacognition. And athletes have a high metacognition. And I can recall when I was maybe 10, 11 years old, and the coach is starting to say, hey, start seeing yourself making big plays the next day. Start seeing that. So anyways, I took that through, and that's something we can talk about more. And I didn't make the NFL. I tried out. I didn't make it, and I fell apart. And for the next 3 years, I really struggled. I was, who am I? What do I do? I got into some bad habits and really, couldn't figure anything out. I was in the hospital a couple times, and it wasn't a good time in my life. And while I don't look for sympathy for me, it's a time I've always thought about. I've just always thought about. Because it was hard on my parents, it was hard on my brothers, my relationships, and it was all me. It was all me, but I didn't realize at that time that it was that athlete identity that I was missing. And so from there, I got a job in corporate America, and I tried that, and I traded in my jersey for a suit. And I thought, man, okay, this is it, right? A 30-year career, work up the corporate ladder, and let's go. It's game time. Got a promotion within 6 months. I was leading a new business unit in downtown LA, and that was a high. But it lasted a short period of time. I was still lost. I was still working for other people, and that wasn't me. I didn't know where the championship was. Where's the playbook, guys? You're telling me the next 30 years I got to do this? And then I get to retire, and then I get to have fun. So I left that job. I met a gentleman that was fixing air conditioners, and he had those licenses. And I said, "Hey, let's start a company. Like, I've got $7,000. Let's go." And he took a chance. And a few years later, we were close to 30 employees, and that's when an investor who had just sold his gym business on the East Coast for millions and millions of dollars came in. And he was in his mid-40s and put together a great deal, developed a great relationship with me, and bought the business. And so that's really that journey there, and how I became obsessed with the what we call mergers and acquisitions, really at the small markets where it's human-to-human connections and you're really driving teams forward. And from there, he and I partnered on a real estate company. We sold that, so that was 2 for 2. Mm-hmm. And then I started an M&A firm in New York. And we brokered, I want to say to date, a little over 300 companies. But I left that about 2 years ago-ish to really dive into this and what I'm doing here.
So what has kind of caught my attention from the beginning, obviously being a former athlete and a coach, is the people are buying businesses every day, all day long, all around the country, all around the world. It's happening. Yeah. But what you have done, which is just a little bit different, which I think is really interesting, and I think it's needed, that's number one, is identifying the athlete, the former athlete, as a potential owner of a business, where you can kind of marry a former athlete with a company. Mm-hmm. And I guess the first question would be, and you and I have talked about this privately over dinner, but why the athlete? Why would you have an interest in, what would make the athlete an attractive person to buy a business from your perspective?
Sure. Let's go with the data first, and this is all research data driven. 15% higher return on athletes, former athlete as CEOs, versus what I'm going to call a NARP, non-athletic regular people in a CEO role. Okay.
I don't think they'll like being called NARPs. But go ahead.
Hey, that's a term I heard from some of the college kids, right? So 15% higher return on assets from an investor standpoint. Now I'm talking the folks I have in New York, the private equity folks. They look at the data. 17% longer tenured. That means they stay in that role longer. A CEO role is not an easy job, right? The biggest key to success of a small company is that CEO, 17% longer tenured. So they're making more money and they're staying longer. Just a couple high-level stats. The model that I've built and what I do, so I went back to Columbia Business School, which I'm going to say is the best business school in America. And that's you know what I'll say, but the data's there. I came across this model of investing in people, and it was built 40 years ago at Stanford University. And so Stanford and Harvard have been doing this with MBA students, right? So they're taking high qualified school-driven students, they're funding them and buying these businesses. It's been the highest performing asset over the last 40 years, alternative asset over the last 40 years. You've got private equity, you got buyout growth capital, you got venture capital, a lot of athletes, MBA players launching venture capital firms. Then you got what I do. It's been the highest performing. Why do athletes fit that model better? And I sat with these folks. I sat in these MBA classrooms. I sat with these folks. Why do athletes get it better? In the book, and I'm going to talk, and we'll talk about it a bit more, but you look at a small company, you look at the camaraderie, the teamwork. Corporations are spending gazillions of dollars trying to teach their employees what teamwork is, right? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Leadership, you learn that on the field. You learn that on the court. You learn all these things. I go back to metacognition. I talked about my coach telling me, hey, see yourself making good plays before you make them. So I was playing the game the night before I stepped on the field. When you can apply that to business, you understand the game of business, you're making decisions that are better, faster, and you're already seeing the next step, right? That's not something every person out there has. Athletes have that. And the athletic education, the neuroscience and all the data is in the book. We talk about it, is in there. The athletic education is what drives small business success. No doubt in my mind, no doubt. My favorite professor at Columbia Business School, she'll like this, and we're going to be meeting here in a couple weeks. Donna Hirschmeyer, she's been leading the private equity program at Columbia Business School for, 20 years. So she's been in this. She starts her course off and says, spreadsheets don't create synergies, people do, okay? The way I receive that in teaching a private equity MBA course is, hey guys, the data is important, but the people skills are a lot more important. Get things done. Especially you take a small company. You're buying a company with 30, 50 employees. You better have someone that comes in there as a CEO that can develop a relationship, develop a culture, maintain a culture, and drive a team and performance forward. Data is becoming commoditized. More and more with technology, we were talking about this earlier, more and more with technology, the ability to decipher data down to the penny. Oh shit, I've got a phone over here that maybe next year is going to be able to do that even quicker than you.
Right.
So those human skills are important.
How do you find, and obviously your book, I think the book is going to be wonderful for you, and I'm excited for this to really launch and get out there, but the athlete who is hungry to find a business, because what I'm learning is, and I've talked to a bunch of my friends since you and I have met, and I've had a lot of friends that when I started reading, I read your first about 30 pages, and my mind was reeling on, okay, he's talking exactly about this guy or that guy, all people I know. Mm-hmm. But you're trying to marry that a little bit where you have the athlete in a business, but how does that all come together?
Yeah.
How does that how do you bring all that together?
Yeah, good question. So we first start with the mind. You start with a mindset assessment, and we take them through a mindset course. And I put that together in conjunction with a Harvard psychologist who's on my team. And we take athletes through transitioning some of those competitive drives, some of that high you get mentally, and driving it through the mind. And how do you apply that to business? And then from there, we take them through this model of writing a thesis on what's the business you want to buy. Okay, give me the idea of what do you think? So is it based on your experience, based on your network? Is it just, hey, I think it'd be really cool to own this company? Right? So we take down different industries, and there's hotter industries than others that are easier to fund right away. But it's really driven through the athlete. What do they want to buy? What's their dream? And that's one of my goals. If I look back to my hard time, those 3 years where I was hit with that identity gap, I wanted a coach that said, hey, what do you think you're good at? Mm-hmm. Look at all these industries out there. What do you think you're good at? And then what's your synergy? What do you have that fits in that? Maybe you've got a network. Maybe you've got experience. Maybe your mother ran an accounting firm and you've listened to it your whole life. Or maybe maybe you took accounting classes in college, so you can connect with owners that are looking to sell their business, right? And so they write a really, really succinct but detailed thesis on what they want to buy. And from there, we partner that mindset assessment and that thesis, and we work with my investors, and they go find the business. We've got a lot of businesses that come through, and we're going through the largest wealth transfer in history. We've got $40 trillion worth of small businesses that are looking for new owners.
Wow. Between
now and 2040. And 70% of those folks don't have a succession plan, right? And what I found in brokering a lot of these, so I said my firm's done over 300 deals. I probably sat in between 30 to 50 deals, I would say, really intimately in a lot of these deals, and it comes down to values and trust. So when a seller's looking to sell their business, the money's important, but more so the values and trust. This is one of their babies, right? There's generally three things people, you better be careful if you mess with this in their life: their family, their home, their business, right? So you're messing with their business. And my favorite story, I did a deal in Colorado with a seller. It was about a $15 million transaction, and during that, we had multiple buyers looking for, wanted to buy this great business, wanted to buy it. And the seller said to me, and he wrote this, and I've got it, I've got this on my website. He said he took about $1 million less cash at close because he was concerned about the culture staying intact and his legacy remaining, right? You don't want to be the guy that sells your business or the woman that sells your business, and you're sitting on the beach of the Bahamas and everyone's pissed at you.
Right.
You look like a greedy SOB. So yeah, and don't know where I was going with your question there, but that's really the breadth of it. It comes down to values and trust. And
let me ask you this one: How often do you find this, Jay? Because I think that some of the guys that I've known in my life pretty well, they struggle post career. And I'm talking about some of the guys that maybe even made it to the NBA or the NFL or Major League Baseball. They've actually played at the highest level. Now, they may not be Magic Johnson and they're a superstar and become a billionaire one day, but they've made a little bit of money. They had a lot of stature. There's a ton of stature in that. You're a small town guy from wherever, and you find a way to rise all the way up, and you play in the NFL or the NBA, you walk into a restaurant, and and not that ego's a bad thing, but it's a real thing, that when I walk in that restaurant, people know who I am, And then one day, time passes, I'm not playing anymore, and I lose that. I'm just lost out there. And then I think, and I have seen that a lot with guys. Some guys that I know, they can kind of pick themselves up and get going and transition into something else. There are other guys that, boy, they're struggling. They're hunting for something, but they can't find it. They're hunting out there. What is it that's gonna, get my juices flowing every day? And I think a lot of guys struggle with that. Have you found that a lot? Until they can kind of figure something out, it's really hard. Yeah. Because they've stood on the top box. They've been there. They're way up there, and then their identity is built in that. It's who I am, and all of a sudden I'm not that guy anymore. And then they have time and they have money. And that's usually a bad combination for people. And a lot of times that's why you see former athletes end up sometimes in trouble, or things happen in their life. They're probably dealing with a little depression, maybe, or isolation. They just I can't figure out what to do here. Or do you see that some with some of the guys and gals maybe you've come across in time?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So in writing this book, we interviewed over 1,000 folks, and not big names. So you think of the people, think of college athletes. That was really the breadth of it, because my journey, when I didn't make that NFL, when I tried out, I didn't make it, that's where mine ended. And I thought, man, my teammates, that was me. Well, I went through 132 studies, interviewed over 1,000 people in doing this book, and the studies backed that over 90% of college athletes, college plus, so college and professional athletes, when that game ends, that's their identity, they suffer this gap. It's on the barometer of how extreme is it. So some folks, it's, hey, my best days are behind me. Some people can transition, my best days are behind me. I go do pickup basketball and I'm a corporate, a corporate junkie. Others, it's quite extreme. You have depression, anxiety. I was telling you a story. There's a gentleman that's ex-NHL that I talked to, and he tells a story where he was sitting in his truck about to drive it off a cliff. He was so lost, right? And so that identity gap is a real thing. And people know about it. It's out there, and people talk about it a bit. But what isn't talked about is, well, what's a solution? What's a solution? Where's the playbook, and where are the coaches to get there? You think of that, the athletic journey. You've got seasonality, you've got a playbook, and you've got a coach. And so when we first asked, what are you? I'm a coach. I'm the coach, right? This is the playbook, and the business is the seasonality, and that's the journey. It's going to be a 5 to 7 year journey that you're going to run. We're going to gamify that business for you and show you how to get there. And you're going to run it, and you're going to reach that championship. When it comes 5 to 7 years and you've reached all these mechanisms, you have the opportunity to either sell it or buy more, create your own empire. You hit on a bit of the ego and feel good, stuff like that. Entrepreneurship's a hot word. If you're an entrepreneur, you're sexy, right? There's 2 routes to be an entrepreneur. There's starting a business, 90% fail. That's data. Or you buy a business. 6 out of 10 people that go to buy a business are successful. And now you're buying something that's already cash flowing, already doing well. It's not franchise owned, so you don't have barriers on it. You get to put your creativity in it. The athletic education, we can drive it to the neuroscience. Athletes have high creativity. And you can run that business, right? So you got higher chance of success, and now you're a sexy entrepreneur. So, as unsexy as it is buying a plumbing company, and let's say in Georgia, get yourself on the magazine of all the plumbing companies. You're now the entrepreneur, right? Let's go.
Yeah,
it's game time, right? And the other thing we talk about is the physical aspect. I don't have a formula for that to replace any of the physical aspect.
Right.
Get up at 5 a.m. and beat the crap out of your body. Right.
Right.
But then it comes down to this. This is your new weapon up here.
Yeah.
And what I'm trying to democratize, and what this book talks about, is the athletic education really drove the muscles up here to drive business success. It did.
I would think as well, correct me if I'm wrong, but and not that the non-athlete doesn't have these things, because a lot of times they do, and but I've lived in an athletic world my entire life, but the athlete has been forced to, through his or her life, to understand how hard you really do have to work to get something.
Yeah.
And the sacrifices you have to make. And for most athletes, I'm sure you were the same way like I was, it just became part of life. It wasn't anything that was off the charts, unique, but everybody. But I can remember, I'm in junior high school, and I decided I wanted to be a Division I basketball player, and I was going to get up and go to the gym before school as an 8th grader, 7th grade. and I'm going to just shoot and run and dribble, and I'm going to just do everything I can before class. And I remember going into the first period, and I'm dripping sweaty, you know, and I'm the only one in there like that. And I'm looked a little bit like I'm a knucklehead, like, what are you doing, you know? But the athlete there are some characteristics, and again, not to say that other people don't, but I would think there are some of those that are so ingrained that will transition really well if they can get excited about owning a business.
Yeah.
If I can get excited about it, then all of those things start coming back, you know, because most of the time your successful athletes, they will not accept anything other than winning. I'm not losing.
Yep.
I will not lose. I will not fail.
Yep.
I will be so resilient, and I'm going to figure this thing out one way or another. How do I get on the court to play?
Yep.
That guy in front of me, he's better, or he's just as good, or I got a guy behind me, he's breathing down my neck to take all my minutes, because he's pretty good too. You know, and how do I'm going to figure this thing out. So I would assume a lot of that will translate for guys that would potentially you may end up working with.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Resiliency is a great word, right?
Right.
That's in the neuroscience too, and
Right.
and we can derive that. Entrepreneurship, running a business, isn't easy, right? There are ups and downs. You've got customers slamming in your face. You've got employees to deal with. You got all this stuff, right? But when you can translate those same, you know, almost innate characteristics that you've developed over time into business, and you show up the next day again, you still get up at 5 the next day. You had a crappy day the day before, and you keep going, and you can translate to business. You're gonna win. You're gonna win. If you know, one thing, if these athletes are driven by money, which a lot of people are, in this model, over a 5 to 7 year period, depending on the business, the average person walks away with $6 million, right? So you can go take that resiliency, and you know, and a lot of universities and their sports athletic departments have corporations that come and recruit them as they come out, and you can go work that, and you can go do that. Or you can have some skin in the game, buy a business, and you're going to live or die on that thing, right? Your investors are going to back you, and you're going to have a team, you're going to have a coach involved to help you get there. And so that's the formula to success. I mean, resiliency, which, you know, a lot of people talk about, and grit, a lot of people talk about. When you can apply that to business, your future is so bright. You know, your best days aren't behind you. The ultimate sport is business. It's the ultimate sport.
And really, athletes, they don't really know it, but they're in the sport of business. I mean, their game is their business.
Yeah.
It is their business.
Yeah.
That's how potentially I'm going to make money, is off my game. I'm going to get good enough to make money. So that translates. All right, I'm going to play devil's advocate for you here. I'm going to fire one at you here. So let's assume that I've played in the NBA, and I've played for 6 or 7 years, and I've got a money manager that's helped me, and my agent has helped me. I'm that guy, okay? And I'm out of the league now, and you know, I'm kind of bouncing around, and boy, there's this opportunity to buy this really interesting company. And I've read your book, and I'm excited, and I say, hey, Jay, you know, this is really great. But then I come back and say, but you know what, though? You know what? My guy wanted me to invest in this other company, and I put $200,000 in that, and then I tried this other one, and I did that 5 or 6 times, and I lost my butt every time. And I've been used a little bit. I feel like that. And I feel like athletes sometimes feel like that later.
Yeah.
So now here I come, and man, I kind of like you, but man, trusting you with my money and buying this salon over here or whatever, I'm nervous.
Yeah.
Because I feel like I have been led down that road, and I don't have a lot to show for it.
Yeah.
So if I'm that guy, I'm that guy, and I'm coming to you, and I'm saying, Jay, I'm just going to be honest. I don't know, man. I've been burned before.
Yeah.
I've been burned.
What are you doing day to day?
Probably a whole bunch of nothing.
A whole bunch of nothing.
Playing pickleball.
Yeah, that's a great question. So, first and foremost, when they get involved in these companies,
Right.
they're the CEO. Let's talk about a really wealthy person.
Well, that's a game changer right there.
Yeah.
Because typically you're an investor.
You're an investor, right?
Right.
Right. But let's talk about the investor side, right? So let's say you're an investor. You're a board member in that small company, right? You're in the game. We're creating a team environment. I'm the coach. We've got a peak performance coach and operational advisor that surrounds these CEOs. You bring the money to the table if that's the idea there, and we don't need the money. But if you bring the money to the table and you want more skin in the game, and you want to run it, and you can run the business, you can succeed in this book. You can read this book, and you can go through my accelerator, and you can pass my test. More power to you. Let's roll, right? Pure investor. You're not just playing pickleball all day. You've got some other business going on, but you made a lot of money in athletics and you believe in other athletes. You get to choose that person and that business. You get a board seat. We're creating a team environment, right? It's not just investor. It's not the I just got a hit on this because I dropped it earlier. Venture capital is really sexy right now. A lot of NBA stars are doing it. A lot of NFL stars. I've got this tech venture capital thing, okay? I know that playbook left and right. I know it. That's just putting money and hoping 1 out of 10 people are successful, right? And this last year, we saw a lot of those go out of business. This one here is a very human-to-human transaction. The business is super important, and we're going to source the right businesses, and these athletes are going to find the right business, and they're going to work the mechanics of that business. What's the cash flow? What's the revenue? Let's look at the trailing 3. It's not rocket science to understand, but they got to go through the course to understand it, right? And they're going to find that a good business with recurring revenue, 3 years of great, customers, and a seller that's created a great team that wants to sell to this person. In a lot of these deals, that seller of that business, when an athlete comes in, that seller oftentimes has a transition period, 6 months, sometimes up to 3 years, depending on the business. So now you've got a seller of a business also involved helping transition that thing properly, and you structure the deal accordingly. And so the chances of success are super high, right? You've got a big team environment at the top. So, a little different than just going to, a big name athlete and saying, hey, I need a check. We're sourcing those people that didn't make it big. Maybe they do have a big bank account, maybe they don't, but they're operators. They're a hell of an operator, and they can transition that.
That's a great answer, because that registers right away, like the difference in ownership.
Yeah.
Because if I own, I've got a lot of skin in now.
Yeah.
And like we said about earlier, I think a lot of guys, I'm just not going to let it fail. I'm just not.
Yeah.
Some players have that, and I was scouting for the Mavericks a couple years ago, and a couple guys that I recommended that Dallas took. I kept saying to them, that guy he will not fail.
Yeah.
He will figure it out.
Can I ask you a question? So let's take that same approach. 10 people, former Division I athletes, 10 people, regular people. You don't know anything else. They graduated all across the board. You've got $1 million. In this model, where are you going to source your person?
Over there.
You're going the athlete.
I am.
Yeah.
Because I also know the ingredients that most of them have. Not all athletes.
Yeah, not all of them.
Because same thing, like I'm scouting for Dallas, and I'm saying, okay, let's talk about this guy, who, by the way, may have been in drafted 4th overall. And I'm saying in the front end, I've done this for 35 years. I wouldn't bet on that guy. I'm not betting on him. Now, there's another guy that sometimes flies under the radar that I'm saying, I'll bet on him. I will bet on that guy. I will put my reputation on the line on his success. So for me, I would still end up in that pool with the athlete, but I still want to find the right one in there.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
We all do with anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree with you. And the folks I work with agree with you also.
Yeah.
You take 10 v 10, we're going to source these people over here because we know they're not going to give up. We know they're going to show up every day. We know they're coachable. We know they can develop a culture. that all translates beautifully into these businesses,
Mm-hmm.
right? It is about finding the right one, but there's a higher formula for success over here with the athletes. No doubt about it. No doubt in my mind.
So what? So first of all, this is great. I actually really like it, and it makes so much sense to me because I'm in this world. You know, I'm as a former athlete, coach, and all those type of things. But so somebody who's watching, listening, where can they find it? Tell me a little bit about it. Let's dive into, or tell me a little bit more about the book, but then also where can I get it and what do I do from there?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for reading it. So the book's coming out April 2nd through Simon & Schuster. It's available for pre-order on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Simon & Schuster. And, a bit about the book. So 3 or 4 years ago, I talked with a mentor of mine, and I had success. I started these small companies, and I had a little bit of a life change at that point about 3 years ago, and I really wanted to do something where what my mentor mentioned to me. He said, "Jay, you need to make the leap from success to significance. Right? Time's short. Time's short. So." I digress, and I've thought about this journey from 15 years ago because it was so hard on my family and me. And I've always wanted to give a tool to my tribe of people, which are athletes. And in business, in the business environment, in general business, you can find an athlete the way we do business together. It's something. It's something you feel in the way they do business. And that's when I started, really writing the book. I had notes for the past 15 years about how hard I've got all this stuff. About 3 years ago, I really started diving in, writing the book, and came across these tools and these opportunities of, hey, how can I change other people's lives? How can I get them out of this crap? And how can I champion their journey, the athletic education as well? And so wrote the book for a few years, and then we want to talk about patience. There's some patience there. April 2nd can't come soon enough at this point. It's been fun, and it's a message. Book sales don't make authors rich. It's really just to drive a message, and really to inspire people, to give them an opportunity, to give them a playbook, right? Because there's kids in Alabama that all they've got is sports. Can we translate that into business? You're damn right you can.
Yep.
So more about the books, not just buying a business, and that's one of the playbooks.
Right.
But we dive into the neuroscience of what you learned on the field, on the court, on whatever it is, whatever that is, and we inspire people, to come out of this and say, look, I learned something. I learned something that's going to serve me the rest of my life.
Yep.
I'm sure you talked about that too as a coach, right? In this room, on this court, this stuff's going to apply to your life. This is how it's going to apply to your business life.
Right.
So, it's really, drawn from that. So for me, making the leap from success to significance, I want to leave my mark on this world and inspire others.
That's a wonderful thing, and I would encourage everybody. It's called After the Game. The author is Jay Dixon, and I loved what you just said as we close, because there was years and years and years ago, I remember somebody telling me, Mark, always pursue passion and not profit. And I think for the most of my adult life I did. I pursued my passion. And usually profits came later. I was able to make a little bit of money. But when I got those screwed up and mixed around, it really didn't work out for me when you're just pursuing profit. Like for you, that's significance for you, and the finding tools that are going to benefit, because there are so many guys and girls and athletes that, in my perspective, in my view, this is well needed. And I played basketball at the University of Alabama, and we lived basketball, and the football team lived together. Bear Bryant Hall, believe it or not, it was an athletic dorm back when that was legal. But even those football players, think about those guys, and you play football at the University of Alabama, and that becomes your identity for your whole life. you're that guy that played on the whatever team on this certain year or play, and the tools that I think that you can grab out of this, I think for not just those guys, but for everybody in all sports, I think it's going to be really beneficial. So
Yeah.
I think you're onto it. You're doing a great job.
Well, thank you. And think about that Alabama football player when he goes to source a company in the state of Alabama, that seller's going to want to pick up the
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Jay Dixon, thank you for being on the front row, and I hope everybody's enjoyed today. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Good time.